Have you ever noticed that the moment in which you start to set boundaries, people start telling you that you're acting brand new, that you switched up, that you're not acting Christ like, that you're being selfish, and maybe you start to believe that. And that's because no one has ever taught you how to really set boundaries. In fact, you were probably taught how to be more selfless than anything. You were taught how to be available, you were taught how to be self sacrificing. And don't get me wrong, love does require sacrifice, but not to the expense of yourself. What if I told you that setting boundaries could probably be one of the most Christ like things that you can do? Because to be honest, even Jesus had boundaries. He told people no, he sent people away. He even protected his inner peace with the people that he kept around him and the people that he kept afar. Now, today, we're going to be going step by step through what it takes to create boundaries and to create boundaries without guilt or shame or fear and without even questioning if this is the right thing to do. Now, listen, before you jump in, I do want you to subscribe, hit that like button, turn on the post notification bell because 90% of you guys watching the show up every week are not subscribed yet. And for those of you who don't know who I am, hey, I am Sia the Transparent Therapist, and I help women unpack their past trauma so they can have a better relationship with themselves, with others, their friends, and Christ. Because that's what we seek, longer lasting relationships. And I don't want you to forget that I have a Cure My Anxiety book in the description box. It's very short, very informative. It gives you the scriptures and practical tips that you need in order to move from an anxious space into a secure space and doing it with the love of God. Now, y'all, let's get into it. Boundaries are biblical, all right? They're not necessarily selfish. Boundaries don't necessarily keep people out, but it helps to show people how we want to be treated. In fact, it even keeps people in that we know are there to help serve us and for us to serve them. Most people think that boundaries are there to push people away, but where's the proof? Let's challenge that. Because last time I checked, Jesus didn't let everyone into his circle or have access to him. In fact, he had his inner three and then the 12. The last time I checked, Jesus walked away from people who drained him. The last time I checked, Jesus set clear expectations for the people around him on how he should be treated and how they should be treated as well. Now, y'all, I had that song come up last time that I checked. I think that's Nipsey Hussle. Lord, yeah. But yes, he actually kept people in check. And I always love to say this. Boundaries are there because we aren't supposed to build walls, but they're supposed to serve as gates, right? So they open freely. A lot of times people are just like, hey, I'm building a boundary, so I'm going to build this wall up. Well, that doesn't really serve you. But when you make your boundary a gate, it gives access on your own time on who and what can come in and who and what can go out. Now, if the most loving person on earth had boundaries, why can't you? What is stopping you right now? And when you love people without boundaries, it's actually a sense of self abandonment because you are not putting things and systems in place that say, hey, I respect myself enough to not allow this said thing or this said person to be in my life or to do this thing that irritates me or pulls me away from the love of Christ. So I do want to shout this. And so if y'all have me on low volume, turn me up. God did not call you to abandon yourself in order to be accepted by others. And for your stubborn people who did not turn up the volume, I'm going to say it low so you have to turn up the volume. God did not call you to abandon yourself in order to be accepted by others. If you guys don't know me right now, I'm such a goofball, but seriously, right? So when we are in spaces where we feel like we can't have boundaries, we are throwing ourselves by the wayside. We're telling ourselves that we don't love ourselves enough to stop what's happening. If this is hitting home with you, I want you to drop in the comment section of me. Say, yes, this is me. This used to be me. Because there are times in our lives where I know we have done things to appease others to then put ourselves on a back burner. And I don't want us to confuse this with being self sacrificing. But what I'm saying is, when it's something that abuses you, you don't abandon yourself. You go in, you step in, you give yourself a hand and pull yourself up. And by doing so, you're creating boundaries. If we know boundaries are so important, why do we not implement them? I think most of us who are raised in homes where boundaries weren't respected, we have a problem with doing this, right? Because maybe whenever you tried to speak up, you were silenced. Maybe when you tried to speak up, you were labeled as difficult. Maybe whenever you needed space, people guilt tripped you. Maybe when you wanted to be loved, you were told you have to be available 24/7 for another person in order to get that love. But I want to ask a question to you guys. How many times have you avoided saying no so you wouldn't feel guilty and then ended up saying yes in order to appease someone? I'm pretty sure it's happened a lot, right? That yes comes from a place that's not of love. That yes comes from a place that is from survival, that place that needs validation. And the only validation we need is from Christ. So if that question that someone asks you is warranted a no, you give that no so that you're not operating from a place of survival, but instead a place of love. And for those of us who want to build healthy relationships, we know that we can't build healthy relationships if we're doing it based on neglect. In fact, we have to set healthy boundaries in order to build the confidence we need to have a healthy relationship and be whole in that relationship with the other whole person. Many times we find ourselves being very partial with people. And so we're hoping that, oh, that person will complete me. It doesn't necessarily work that way because it doesn't make for a healthy relationship. So let's talk about the steps, okay? The first step here is you need to identify your non negotiables. One of the biggest mistakes we have with boundaries is actually not knowing what we want or what we actually need. So start to ask yourself the hard questions. Where in my life do I feel the most drained? What do I keep saying yes to that I actually want to say no to? Maybe even what are the top three things that I need out of life or in a situation or even from a person to start feeling respected and valued? And when you start to create these answers, you'll start to understand your limits and how to create better boundaries. Let me give an example, okay? Let's say you have a person in your life or people in your life who constantly call you 24/7, 24/7, and you don't want to be on the phone with them, but you answer anyway. What you can do is start making this healthy boundary to say, hey, look, I actually don't accept calls after 9 p.m. because maybe that's the time at which I like to unwind. Instead of saying, like, oh, I don't really like to answer the phone after 9 p.m., but if you call, maybe sometimes I'll answer. You see the difference there? You have to set a limit and let your limit be known. And you know for yourself what that limit is when you start to be honest with yourself. The second step here in creating healthy boundaries is making your boundaries clear without over explaining. Some of us can over explain so much so that we talk ourselves out of a boundary. You don't have to always explain yourself. You're confident in your boundary, so you portray that boundary. Maybe it's, hey, I don't want to go to this set event. I'm not available. Instead of, I wanted to go, but I'm not sure. And, maybe if I make it on time, I don't want to go or I will go. You see where you start to create these 3-page essays, you start to talk yourself out of even the boundary you're creating because the essay is there because you want to justify your no. But justification isn't needed when you are confident in the boundary that you have, or even building confidence in the boundary that you desire to have. Again, this boundary is to let people in or take people out. And it's there for fairness so that you're not abandoning yourself. You don't need to justify, you don't need to clarify. You just need to present that boundary. And the people who love you and really respect you will respect that boundary as well without having that 3-page essay. Listen, if you're struggling with creating boundaries and then feeling guilt afterwards, I want you to make sure you're subscribed because I have a video coming out later on that's going to describe how to deal with the guilt with making boundaries. 3, I need you to enforce your boundaries without apologizing. Sometimes we meet situations where an apology might be warranted, but not for a boundary, just because you are taking accountability for something you did wrong. But when we're creating a boundary, what we're doing is we're setting the expectations and we do not fold. People are going to test your boundaries. Why? Because we are people who have rebellious spirits. Someone might tell us, hey, look, we're not taking any orders after 9 p.m. And you might go to the drive up window and say, hey, please, look, I just need a cookie. Okay. That is us testing a boundary. They're going to guilt trip you sometimes. People in your life will guilt trip you. Sometimes people will act all confused, like, oh, I don't remember you said that. Sometimes, my favorite, someone might make you feel like you're doing something wrong by creating that boundary. Oh, what do you mean we can't come over whenever we want? Well, no, this is my space. And if I don't desire for you to be here unless you call, in fact, my husband has a doormat. This is his boundary, okay? He doesn't like people popping up without having called first, right? We have a doormat in the front of the door. And I remember at one point, I think the mailman was dropping something off that we need to sign for. And we both ended up answering the door, and he was just like, no. And I said, huh? My husband was looking at him confused, and he's like, no, I didn't call first, but here's your package. And it was so hilarious. But people will make you feel as if the boundary you're setting is wrong, like you're doing something wrong. People are going to test your boundary, but you have to enforce it because they're going to see how far they can push and how far they can get. And when you stand firm, it's not mean. It actually gives you the confidence you need to continue to enforce the boundary that you desire for yourself. Especially if someone is disrespecting your boundary and you've already made it clear that you're choosing to respect yourself by putting this boundary up, and they're choosing to disrespect you by disrespecting your boundary. And at that point, you have to decide, are you willing to keep um, sacrificing your discomfort for their comfort? Asking yourself, are you willing to protect your peace by any means necessary, even if it makes them uncomfortable? So, for example, if you've already set a boundary and they keep pushing it, will you have a limit? Will you cut off communication? Are you done with the conversation? For example, maybe you don't like when people use a certain derogatory term and you told them already, hey, when you're around me, please don't use it. But they continue to use it and they proceed to not even apologize. Okay, are you going to continue conversation with them? And the thing is, you're not asking this person to change. It's just or change overall. It's just, hey, when you're with me, do you mind cutting down the use of that term? And if they're unwilling in that said moment, because they're not with you 24/7, maybe you don't have to have conversation with them. That is a boundary, because boundaries do not push away the right people that are meant to be in your life at all. When you love yourself enough not to abandon your needs, it's not a sin, y'all. It's not. As much as people want to tell you be selfless, you also have to be respectful of yourself. Selflessness does not equate to self deprecation, or it doesn't equate to you letting yourself go. Selflessness just means that you're giving out of one with disregard to selfishness. But I love to say it's on a spectrum, right? We just got to find that balance. Okay, it shouldn't be all here and all here. We practice so we have a balance so that we show up for ourselves in our true nature and in a genuine nature. And this is because God created you to be worthy. He called you to be worthy. And you can't be worthy if you are abandoning yourself with abandoning those boundaries. So today I want you to give yourself the permission to go forth and create these boundaries, create the precedents that people know, hey, when I'm in her presence, she has these boundaries and she sticks to it. For me, with my clients, they know, hey, I'm giving you a grace period of 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you can call me and say, hey, can we meet? And I will tell you no. Why? Because I've set that precedence and we'll have to reschedule. because that's a boundary and my time is precious to me, especially because it's not something you get back. So set those boundaries, stand firm, do not fold, and consider yourself worthy because God considers you worthy first. If this resonated with you at all, I want you to drop a comment in the comment section below. Let me know, what boundary are you sticking to? I'm still sticking to my time boundary. There's so many boundaries that I have though. But another boundary that I can share is that after the 10 p.m. mark, I don't care who you are. I'm not answering the phone for you unless it's an emergency. And I know it's an emergency because those people who know they can call me can bypass that setting they have on the phones. Okay. But if my kids are with me and my husband's with me, most of 9 times out of 10, I'm not answering the phone because I like to spend that time with the Lord and wind down and go to bed. Drop in the comment section below. Let me know what the boundary is that you have, and let's love on ourselves. Let's set these boundaries. Let's go forth. Let's be amazing and don't apologize for it. All right. Walk good. Keep the vibes high. I'll see you in the next video. So click the next video. Bye.